Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Cities Skylines 2 and welcome back to Columbia County. In today's episode, we are going to be building the central business district of Columbia County's newest town, LeBryan. And that's going to include a few services such as death care thanks to the UK Parish Church, as well as medical, police, and fire coverage, which will happen to include some custom liveries for the vehicles thanks to the recolor mod. And then we're going to be working on a large elementary school campus using the original elementary school that was in the game when it launched. And we'll be wrapping things up with a new bus terminal nearby the train station, along with a whole bunch of detailing and landscaping. But before we jump into it, I just want to let you know 3 quick things. Number 1, if you enjoy the video, please feel free to leave a like on it. It helps out the channel. Number 2, if you're new around here and you like what you see, feel free to subscribe. It's completely free, it's completely optional, but it's appreciated. And number 3, you might be interested to know that YouTube channel members can get early access to most videos on this channel, sometimes a week or more in advance, for as little as $1 per month. Check the link in the video description for more info on that, alongside links to the mods that we're using in this series. Anyway, I know that was a lot, but now that we're through it, let's get to it. So I don't usually do any prep work before I sit down to record one of these episodes because I like to do everything on camera. That just seems like the right thing to do. But I decided in about 30 minutes that I had to spare that it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to go into LeBryan and just lay out some roads and kind of get my idea into this space for what I want our main street to look like. And speaking of the main street, I have made some changes to it. I've added some parking alongside one side of it, the opposite side to where the trains are running. And speaking of the trains, I have seen a few comments talking about maybe just adding more tracks to LeBryan, the way we did over here in Blackwater. And there's 2 reasons that I'm not going to do that. Reason number 1 is, honestly, I kind of don't want to. I didn't want to add double tracks here either. They're just essential because we have the rail yard over there in the distance. And reason number 2 is that when this is done, I think it's going to look so much better with just a single track going through here. It's important to keep in mind that this is going to be very, very, very loosely based on a real place. It is very, very loosely based on LaGrange, which is in Kentucky, and that's kind of where I'm going with this layout. LaGrange has, as we've talked about before, a train track going down its main street. So that's why we have Main Street in here. That's also why we have places like Kentucky Street, and we have places like Oak Street, Poplar Street, Cedar Street, and there's a few others here as well, Washington Street. Those are all actual streets in LaGrange, and I thought that would be, kind of a nice thing to do in here. Now, with this place being based on a real-life location in Kentucky in the United States, it might then be a little bit weird to you that I'm going to be using UK mixed housing for our main street, specifically all of this space and all of this space and all of this space up here as well. There is a reason that I'm doing that though. I want my buildings in here to look a certain way. I want them to be built out of a certain material, and I don't want them to have peaked rooftops. I don't want too much variety in the heights and the styles. I'm going for a very, very specific look, and that is why the game is paused, because I don't want them building. I want to use these guys. I want to use the UK Town Centre building number 9. It is level 5, and that is on purpose because the level 5 version of this building is made out of bricks. If we go and filter with Find It and get the level 3 one, it is all smooth looking. And the level 1 version of this building is built out of sort of big concrete blocks. So it's really not what I'm looking for. With all of these buildings in place, this doesn't quite look the way I want it to, and that's because the buildings just aren't the right color. They're not built out of the right materials, but this is roughly about as big as I want LeBryan to be. I'm not really looking for anything that's going to have high rises or massive apartment buildings, and if anything, the population's really not going to be much either. The real life version of this place, well, I said real life version of this place, the real life inspiration for this place has a population of about 10,000 people as of 2020, so we're going to be aiming for something relatively similar. Now, in saying that, if we have a little bit of a look, the residents are currently 256, and that is going to increase because some of these buildings have room for 18 households, which is, well, that's quite a few people, and they're level 5 buildings, so that is as much as it's ever going to be, and these buildings aren't going to, well, obviously they're not going to level up, and they're not going to level down either because they're locked, so we should be okay. I'm expecting about 1,000 people to be living on Main Street and Forest Street though, and honestly, that's probably okay. But what I want to do, and what I think is most important for this place, is I want to go in and start to work on recoloring this. Now, as you can see, these UK assets don't necessarily get recolored in the same way that other assets do. That is totally fine. It's not a criticism that I'm not saying, you know, these assets don't work with this mod. The assets are perfect. I love them. They're amazing. It's just that they just don't happen to work with the recolor mod, and that's fine. Assets shouldn't be getting made with mods in mind. That's not how these things work. You can recolor them, which is fine. We can totally make this work. And this is sort of what I'm looking for. And then what I'd like to do is just get my little painter tool and just bring that color into a few more of these buildings. So these ones can be red, maybe these ones can be red, and maybe this one can be red. And so, with a bit of recoloring done, it gives us this, which is much more in line with what I'm looking for this space. It's a little bit more understated, it's a little bit more subtle, and it's not quite as bright, which is what I feel this should be. These buildings aren't necessarily new buildings, they're not new developments, and I want those flat rooftops because it just has the vibe that I'm wanting out of this space. When I went into Google Street View and had a look at LaGrange, there were a lot of buildings that just had flat rooftops, and this is just what a sort of an old Kentucky mining town should look like to me. I've never been to Kentucky. I've never been to a mining town in my life. I've watched Justified. That's about the extent of my knowledge. I watched Justified quite recently, actually. It was very, very good. But yeah, that's not LaGrange, by the way. That's oh, I can't remember. It's Harlan County. So yeah, not this county. This is Oldham County. That's anyway, mining town in Kentucky. That's about as much as I know. This has the vibe that I'm looking for. Although what I'd also like to do is come in here and make sure that people are not going to be parking on these sidewalks, because I do want them to use the parking that's on the main street. So we're going to just clear out a bunch of the street or roadside parking that we have around Main Street, just to make sure that everyone is behaving the way I want them to, which for the most part, it looks like they're gonna. It looks like we shouldn't have too many problems with that, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm sure they'll park sort of out here, which I guess we should tidy that up a little bit as well and just make sure they're not going to be doing that. And they are parking down here, which isn't necessarily surprising. So we'll go across here and just make sure they're not doing that either. We should have some shops popping up at some point. It looks like most of these buildings right now are vacant in terms of the commercial part. Anyway, this guy, we've got Laurie's Lentils. That's good. All right, that's a start. We have one shop in this entire town, but it has to begin somewhere. Oh no, we have two. What else have we got up here? What is this? That's whatever. It's a bar. Anyway, I want to come into this space behind Main Street and take out Sunset Lane, because I was thinking that it might be kind of nice, this being a bit of a smaller town, to keep as many of the services as central as we possibly can. And I thought that since this is so far away from Blackwater, which is all the way over there, which is having some healthcare problems, so that should be all right, I want to come in here and build a little UK parish church. Now, I'm not building this because it's from the UK pack. I'm building it because it is a small church asset, and I think having a little church asset back here would be kind of great. Although what I'd also like to do is just give it its own little road, because I think that would be even better. So I'm going to go and just build a little stretch of road across here and find a nice central spot for the church to sit on that road, which I think is going to be, that looks relatively central to me. So it's going to be right about there. And we're just going to bring these one-way roads up to it. And then actually that is not where that needs to go. It is going to go up to about there. And it's going to come down to about there. And that is what we're looking for the little one-way road, because we can expand this, which of course we're going to do because it just fills out the space that little bit better. I'm also thinking I might use Move It and just use the marquee tool to grab pretty much everything in this space and level it to the height of the church so that it's nice and flat, and I can work with that a little bit better, because I kind of want to put some parking lots around this. I think that would kind of make sense. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe these little side alleyways get turned into two-way alleyways, and I just extend this straight through to there and you straight through to there. And then at the sides of the church, we can just go in with something like a medium parking lot on this side. And you know, all it took, as it always does, was a bunch of oak trees, alder trees, and hickory trees to bring this place together and get it looking exactly how I want it to look. It's just a little community church right in the middle of LeBryan. We also have a bunch of people moving in here, which is very exciting. We have cars sort of coming and going, doing their thing. We have a bunch of cars just lining the street. We don't have that many businesses, which is unfortunate, but we do slowly have people moving in here. Having a look at the population, it is up to 320, which is going to continue to increase. And I would imagine that will continue to be a thing as I go through here and add some North American commercial buildings just behind the train station, which I think is a good place for them. I think it makes sense to get some of these buildings into these spaces, although unfortunately it looks like we're going to have to deal with some weird sizing issues in here, which I don't necessarily love. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to make this work unless I just add more parking to these spaces, which would definitely be an option. I don't know that I want to do that, but I think a bunch of these buildings along here is totally fine. Yes, they're all the same, but we can deal with that. And I guess in terms of parking, what I could do is go through here. This road is way too big. I could add this guy just into the middle of that space. And honestly, that might actually be the easiest and best way to just sort of deal with this weird little gap that we have. I don't want to go for a smaller building in there because I do know that the smaller buildings won't really match the vibe that I'm going for here, but I would like to go in and recolor it. I actually really like the look of these buildings when they're sort of a sandstone-y color, which maybe that's a little bit much to do when the ground around the building is also sort of a sandstone-y color. And you know, even though these colors are maybe a little weird looking, I'm okay with how this space has turned out. I just wanted a little bit of commercial zoning in here. I didn't want to bring more UK assets into this space. Some dedicated North American assets definitely fit the vibe for what I'm looking for along Poplar Street, and they really nicely fill in the space around the medium train station, where we are starting to see some people hopping off the train. We're starting to see some people coming over to get on the train, which is very exciting as well. So hopefully that's going to mean that we're going to see more and more people. Oh, that's unfortunate. That's going to be really bad. That's a good segue though, because I think we might need some some fire services in here might be a really good thing. And I want to say that the original base game firehouse might just fit this space really nicely. I love how the alleyway lines up with the entrance to the lot. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I think this is also a good opportunity to continue those wide sidewalks down here a little bit so no one's going to block in the way of the fire trucks, which is perfect. While we're dealing with services, it would probably make sense to come in here with some policing and a few other services as well. So when it comes to policing, I'm kind of thinking small police station. And in terms of location for this thing, it wouldn't be bad to put it next to the fire department, but I'm going to move it elsewhere just so we space things out a little bit. and I'm sort of thinking it could live maybe just up this way. So it kind of has a little bit of access to that alleyway. That's certainly an option. I think right here might be kind of an interesting spot. I think I'm going to leave a gap between it as well, between it and the alleyway, so I can detail the space around it just a little bit. And then for healthcare, I'm sort of thinking I might go for maybe just the original medical clinic. It's a little bit larger. We do have the small one available, and I'm kind of looking at this space. I think this corner right down here, just off of Oak Street, is a great spot for it, even down here next to the fire department. But I'm thinking this corner next to Oak Street is where the medical center is going to go. Okay, so I've had a slight change of plan. I want to move this small police station down to this space, and I want to move the medical clinic up into the space where that station was, because it kind of fits perfectly in there. And then what I can do is build the extension wing, which I don't think we need, but I can build it on the back here to fill up a little bit of this space. And if I wanted to, I could build another one on that alleyway, which I'm slightly tempted to do, but I just don't think we need it, so I don't think I'm going to bother. I could build it on this side as well, on the other side of that alleyway, but I just don't think we need it, so I just don't think we'll bother. And that looks all right. I like that in there. Now, there is something I want to try that I've experimented with a little bit in City Skylines 2. I don't know if it actually works long term, but we're going to try it. And that's using the recolor mod on vehicles, because you can do that. And my thinking was, I want to change these police cars to be sort of a shade of green. And the reason I'm doing that is because that, to me, kind of looks sort of like a county sheriff color. And that's what I think should be here. So we're going to try it out. I don't know if these vehicles ever despawn. I know that when they go out and come back and park, they will stay green. So as long as these vehicles don't despawn, which the game might do if it gets stuck, so we might have to come back and recolor them. But I like that idea. I like the idea that I can come out here, make that a little green car, and then paint all of them, hopefully, to be the same sort of color. And suddenly we have like a little dedicated police department thing here, and that's very cool to me. I can also change the operating district of this thing to be La Bryan, so those cars will never leave this space, which I think makes sense. I could also send it out to these spaces as well, which I think is a good idea. And then I can do the same thing with the ambulances, I think. I'm not 100% sure if this will work, but I want to see if I do that. Oh, I think I can do the thing that I want to do. I want to make these guys a red color. I want them to be like a kind of dark, sort of brightish red ambulance. If I change this, it changes the color of the stripe. Yes! Oh, that's so good. Oh, that's exactly what I want. So this has its own little like livery for the ambulances as well. That's so cool. Look at that. That's so good. It just changes it. It just changes it up, you know? It gives this place its own little vibe, which I absolutely adore. It's gonna suck if anyone's sick at one of these farms because they're not covered right now, but that's so good. That is perfect. Honestly, service vehicle parking is such a great detail, and I'm so happy this was added to City Skylines 2. I think I'd mentioned that it's something I knew was coming. I just wasn't allowed to talk about it, and I both love and hate the fact that happens. People, anytime I bring that up, people are, oh, so you're bragging about it? You're bragging about knowing? I'd love to talk about it, man. I'm not allowed to. That's how these things work. That's how NDAs work. I'm not allowed to talk about stuff that I'm not allowed to talk about. Okay, so with some detailing done around the medical center, with some detailing done around the firehouse and also the LBSO, which, I mean, it's detailed. It's about as detailed as it needs to be. It could maybe, looking at it, use some kind of wall alongside this parking area. I think that might look a little bit better, or a hedge. I wouldn't be against doing a hedge in here. I think that might actually look a little better if I was to just bring a little hedge around this entire thing. I think that looks okay. I think it nicely sort of encloses it. It's got some parking as well, which I think is important. But with all of that done, there are 2 more services that I want to put into LeBryan, and they're not necessarily, well, they're not essential services, I'm going to be honest. They're going to be the park maintenance depot, just because I think it's a cool looking building and I think it kind of fills in that space really nicely. And the second service I'm looking for is actually going to be the road maintenance depot, and I kind of want to put it maybe sort of down this way somewhere. I'm not 100% sure where it would necessarily go. It might go sort of out here. It could sort of go in this corner though, which I think is honestly a pretty good spot for it. So I think that's maybe where this thing is going to live. I think I want to put it on, I'm gonna say Sunset Street is where I'm gonna put it. I think I'm gonna move it back a little bit so that if I want to put some houses there, I can have some trees kind of between the houses and this building. So right about there seems like a good place for it. And then in terms of this building, I mean, I could upgrade it. I don't think we need to do that. I don't think there's any reason to do that. I would just like to grab this bright orange off of that vehicle and apply it to the building. So with the detailing done around the park maintenance depot, I think there are another 2 things that I want to get into this space before we start putting some lower density residential zoning out here. And those things are going to be number 1, some education, and number 2, some buses. And I want to start with education because I want to have a look at education and see how we're doing. Now, elementary schools are not in a good way. High schools are fine. College is fine. University is less than fine. And so that has me kind of tempted to just use the regular old elementary school out here because it fills in this space in a really cool way. And if I just set it back from this road a little bit, I think it would look great. The only thing I'd like to make sure that I can do is get some kind of large sports park out here. And unfortunately, it seems like that's going to be slightly tricky. An American football field, I think that's essential out here by this school. So I might have to do a little bit of work to make that, well, work. And I'm really not too sure what that work's going to be, other than to move the elementary school from this road up onto this road and take out this section of Washington Street, which I was hoping to avoid doing. But I think unfortunately that's what we're going to have to do, which means Prospect Lane that ran so nicely into that fire station is also going to have to go, but that's okay. It should be okay, and I'm pretty sure I can make this work. So this guy's gonna live right about here, which should give me the space. Yeah, that gives me plenty of space to get this thing in here. So what I'm gonna do is move this elementary school. I'm gonna put it right down here for a second, and I want to give it its own little dedicated road, and that looks okay to me. We can do some details and some decorations in this space in front of it, as long as I can get my football field behind it, which it looks like I can just about do. That is just gonna fit in there. And there we go. We have ourselves a full elementary school. It's got a little upgrade at the back as well, which I absolutely adore. It's not actually symmetrical here either. There's a little bit of asymmetry going on with how this lines up with the roads. And I thought that was going to bother me more than it does, but I actually honestly don't really mind it. I think it just fits into the space so nicely. I love the parking in front of it. I love the surfaces. I love everything that's going on here. I'm so happy with how this thing has turned out. And I guess that finally brings us to building a bus station. Now, in this case, I want to use the local bus station that was in the Modern Architecture Creator Pack because it will fit perfectly into this little space here, which is just opposite Chester Street, and then people can walk around and get to the train station. It's not exactly a perfect transition from the bus station to the train station, but it'll work well enough that I'm sort of okay with it. So it's gonna live right in there. It does have some upgrades, so if we wanted to play around with more platforms, we can do that. And it does have this little extension here, the bus service station, that can go on the back of the building. And I'm kind of tempted to do that just for the sake of getting a little bit of asymmetry in there, just because it gives us another little building at the back and it gives us something different to look at and deal with and all that good stuff. So that's going to live right back there. And then what we can do is very simply just bring ourselves a road that's going to cut around here. And I think just because I love them, I'm going to change that out for a parking road so that people can kind of park around the bus station as well. And I might even go so far as to do wide sidewalks on the inside, so we have kind of a divide between the bus station and the road, similar to what I did over here with this slightly wider parking lot around LBSO. So this, I think, is a pretty good space for the bus station. I like this a lot, and I think we can play around with this a fair bit to make it look kind of interesting. And of course, by that, what I mean is let me just add a bunch of trees to this corner and some bushes around here and just a couple of little fences alongside the building itself. Now, what we can do is come in here and finally get some bus connections. Now, this I'm kind of excited to do. I'm looking forward to getting this thing to be a little bit more functional. So we'll start with some regional connections. We'll go from here, and I guess we're going to go all the way out to here, I suppose. Out to Dorking is apparently where we're going to be going there, which I'm totally fine with. We could go out to Gilbert's as well. We could go down to here, down to Demorest, or you know what, we'll just go to here. We'll go to Dorking because I love the name of it, and we're just going to come back to about there and complete the line, which is absolutely fantastic. The next one is basically going to go in the complete opposite direction. We'll go out to Theodore. We have Merrimack, Piketon, Payne Gap. I don't know about that one. Holloway seems like a fun one. Can we actually get up there? We totally can. That is going to be a huge line if we do that, though. So you know what? Let's just go to, you know what? Prospect Park sounds fantastic. I love that name. So that is where we're going to be going. This one should be totally fine because this is just going to go into Blackwater. So all the way up here, there are so many bus stops in Blackwater. I've never really paid attention to just how many there are. We are unfortunately out of bus stops at this station. So I'm just going to sort of, I mean, look, I can upgrade this thing. I can give it more platforms. I guess it's time. I suppose it's time to upgrade this with some more platforms. We've also got electric bus recharging stations, which honestly seems like a great idea. We have taxi stops, which, you know what? Give it some taxi stops. Let me give it some extra platforms and give it the electric bus thing as well. We'll just fully upgrade this guy because it is our central bus station for Blackwater. So that seems like it would make the most sense. We'll come back down here. We'll go to this guy and we are going to run some buses all the way in. There are so many bus stops here now. It's great. We'll run it up to here and then all the way back down to LeBryan right about there. And just in case you were curious about how busy these bus lines were going to be, there are so many people waiting. This bus is absolutely full. This is bus line 8, which I think is also a Blackwater one. It is not a Blackwater one. So bus line 9 is the Blackwater line, and all of these people, all of them are waiting for a bus to get into Blackwater. So that is, it's hugely successful. There are so many people that are going down, what is it, Poplar Street to the bus station to head into LeBryan. So much so that I think it might be a good idea to just get rid of these regional bus lines. They are being used, but we have trains for that. So you know what? Let's get rid of bus line 7 and let's get rid of bus line 8. We don't need them. The Blackwater line is doing just fine. We'll move it down to that bottom platform. And I think what we probably want to do is give it just a few more buses because it does seem like it's going to be very, very busy. So we'll move it down there, which means all of those people, I think, are going to move. It doesn't seem like they're moving, but they will eventually, I'm sure, head down to the new platform. The extra buses, I'm sure, will be great for them as well. And hopefully it doesn't take away from the train too much, because the whole point of this town was this right here. The entire reason I built this was this road right here with the trains going up and down. So hopefully I'm not taking away from that too much. And again, just to be clear, this thing has 13 passengers coming in here, and all of those people, it fills up instantly. It's so busy. There are so many people wanting to get on a bus to Blackwater. All of those people as well coming around to fill up that bus. It's absolutely fantastic to see. Absolutely love it. And I'm kind of curious actually about how busy things are at this side. And it doesn't look like there's that many people wanting to go out to LeBryan, which is sort of surprising. I was kind of expecting that there would be, but I guess that's okay. This is just a really, really busy station now, which I love to see. I also don't know where most of those people are going, and I kind of don't mind that too much. I just like seeing how busy it is. It's very, very cool. I also think we might want to go in here with some traffic lights on that little junction there, so people have to stop if the buses are going through and the vehicles have to stop if the people are going through. That, I feel like that makes sense with just how busy this space has gotten to be. And so I guess this is about all I really want to do today with LeBryan. I was thinking, and I think I mentioned a few times, we were going to do some low density housing, but I think this is a really solid kind of core base foundation, whatever you want to call it, for this new town. We can do the low density housing and the rest of any services or whatever we need in here in the next episode. But before we wrap things up, I do want to come through and just lay out a few extra roads here and there, because I do think a couple of extra little connections to the regional roads might not be the worst thing in the world. And you know what? I think this is a pretty good sort of layout for where we're going to be putting a bunch of that low density commercial zoning. Like I said, we're not going to be doing that today, and this layout is subject to change. It probably will a little bit, because I do have some ideas for a little bit more commercial that we could put in here. Maybe some offices as well, and some non-polluting industry might be an idea as well, especially out here. We could do some farms, maybe bring a road out and just put some houses out there as well. We could probably do a farm in this space as well, just to get some industry into LeBryan in that particular way. But I think for the most part, we are probably good for today. We are above $4 million. We have 32,000 to almost 33,000 Sims in Columbia County. LeBryan has a population of still under 700 people. The average wealth is wealthy, which makes sense. These are all level 5 buildings, so that checks out. And so I think that does put us in a spot where we are good to leave it there for today. I love how this space is looking. I love that the UK assets have worked so nicely for our main street right here. It looks I don't know if it probably does look more like a UK main street with a train on it than it does a town in Kentucky, but it's it's what I imagine it kind of looks like, okay? It's about as close as I think we can get to what I was going for with this space. Obviously, there's a lot more detailing to be done here. There's a lot more work to be done here, and that is going to take some time. That'll be the next episode. That's going to be the focus for that one anyway. But if you have any suggestions for what we can do with LeBrian as it fades off into the distance, do let me know in the comments below. But for now, I am thrilled with how it's turned out. I hope you are as well. Either way, that's going to do us for today. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. It has been an absolute pleasure as always. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.